Andy Bassi and I are speaking about academics, bridging the gap. It isn't a made-up word. I'm going to start by introducing you, if you don't know the word. I'm going to tell you where it came from and a bit about it and why it is significant. And then Andy's going to talk a little bit about his journey as an academic. He's a living example, as are probably half of us in this room, maybe more than half. I don't know. There will be more than one though, for sure. So, what is a pracademic? Just put your hands up, actually. Have you heard that word before? Doesn't it? Yes. Andy, put your hands up. It was sick.
I was watching people coming.
Okay, so a few people have tried to do this. In the UK, academics is a thing. It is across Europe. It is rounded in a body of research. I haven't just made up a word combining this and that, like couples do with their names, where, I don't know, Evangelina or things like that. Academics is a serious thing. Academics are people who operate at the intersection of the world of academia and the world of professional practice. So practice and academia, academic. It makes sense. There are many other ways to call the word. I put some on here. Some people call them dual professionals. Some people call them practitioner-academics. They're all longer than just saying pracademic. So why would you go and use pracademic, which is what tends to happen in the literature. Pracademics, you can read the definition there in more detail should you want, but generally, pracademics have three characteristics. I've listed what they are here. They operate in two different worlds, and if you ask what they are, colleagues of mine back in London at BPP, where I'm surrounded by a lot of accountants, and a lot of the accountants teach accountancy. And you say, what are you? And they'll say, well, I'm a teacher. Or some of them will say, I'm an accountant. Or some will say, well, I'm an accountant, but I teach. So I'm not quite sure. I've got this dual identity. I'm a business person. I'm an innovator. I'm an entrepreneur. I teach. I'm a teacher, but I'm something else as well. And so that's what academics all are. They have at least a dual identity. They're also very, very concerned about lifelong learning. The top speaker today was talking about lifelong learning, or learning all the time, being a learner. And I suspect everyone in this room is a lifelong learner, or probably we wouldn't have the jobs that we have. We're curious people. We want to learn more and we want to do the best we can. We want to use what we learned over here and there because it will make a difference. And so that's something also that all academics have by way of characteristic. And then the final one here is around being usually very good communicators. And teachers tend to be good communicators because if they weren't, they wouldn't be very good teachers. And people who are inquisitive and inquiring, who want to make a difference, tend to be good communicators. So, of course, there's exceptions to all rules, but those are the sort of three themes that three characteristics that would capture what is academic. Now, I said academics is grounded in literature, and I'm not making that up. There's a few references here onto the literature around academics. You can use Gen AI, Google it, ask whatever you use to tell you all about academics. There's a lot of stuff written about academics. It is a serious topic. I can make it sound quite funny because in a session after like following Tim's, I need to make something quite funny because he's such a good speaker, and therefore adding a bit of fun, hopefully, is my way of dealing with that. But it is very, very serious. And these are some of the themes that come out in the literature about academics. So there's an acceptance that these people exist. And there's a theme around the revolving door of when practice becomes academia and it goes back into practice, so that there's a continually evolving notion of generating learning and teaching, and therefore the scholarship that's happening in the classroom. The revolving door theory is something that you read about in academic literature. Also, imposter syndrome. Traditional academics purely focused on research. They look at practitioners who come to teach and they say they're proper academics, And there's a whole body of research about what makes a proper academic. Is there such a thing as an imposter academic? Why do academics sometimes have imposter syndrome? Who's created that notion? Why is it there? There's loads written about that. That's really interesting. If that's your thing, have a look into it. And so on and so forth. I won't go into those other points. The point I'm trying to make is that this is a serious area that's grounded in research, and there's lots of different schools of thought on it. The significance of it is really to do, and you can read all of this, I'm not going to read that out to you. It's all to do with the gap between what happens in the classroom, whether, whatever level you're at, but in our context, post-secondary level, what happens when you're studying your degree, your graduate degree, your PhD, and then you go to the world of work. You go to work. Everyone has to go to work. Even if you stay in the university, you got your PhD into work, you're still at work. And, quite often, that last example would be the least extreme one, but quite often there's a big gap. There's a big gap between what you've learned and what your employer actually wants you to do. Yeah? And it used to be back in the day, probably the generation of the older ones amongst us, or the previous generations, the people in this room, that, you studied, you went to work, and the first 2 years at work, you were trained to do your job. So it's true. It's a thing. Do you remember, Andy? It's a thing. But that doesn't happen anymore. Employers expect graduates to do the job on day one, or even to do work experience in the company in advance and contribute to the business before they even get paid. Never mind training them when they join. So Practitioner-Academics have a huge role to play in making sure that gap is as seamless as possible from both the employer perspective and the employee perspective, the new graduate, the alumni perspective. So, that this is the significance of Practitioner-Academics in our world. If I want to mention scholarship a little bit, I did mention that word once already, because university professors are required to and should have their jobs if they aren't doing research and scholarship. So scholarship is a part of research. So there's a notion that all academics are research active one way or another. Might be through scholarship, might be through more traditional means of research. I speak specifically about scholarship because where I come from, scholarship is how we frame our research. It's not unusual to use Boyer's definition of scholarship in a university. It is the one that we use at Accenture, and it is the one that I used at BPP way back when I set up their approach on scholarship. We landed Boyer's definition. Have a look at the definition. It talks about the application of the most current knowledge. Okay, so you've got to be current. Communicated in ways that are validated by peers, right? So it's not just my idea, but I've checked in with my peers. I have a network of peers who I'm talking to. So this is an evolving thing. It's not just my crazy idea, but peers have validated my idea, and it influences others beyond my institution. So if I can say those three things about what I'm teaching, that is scholarship. Yeah, I'm influencing those beyond my institution. When my student does something because of what they've learned in this class, because of how I've taught them in this class, and it affects someone beyond this institution, that's scholarship. So the notion of scholarship can be really, really powerful and very accessible. And, you can have everyday scholarship. It's happening all the time, but quite often academics in particular don't realize they're doing it. And that's why sometimes they get an imposter syndrome and they see all the people doing research and think, well, I'm not as good as them. But in many ways, they're better than them because they're preparing students for the world of work. And in a real life scenario for the student in the classroom, it's much more important to be able to apply the concept, the theory, the whatever, in a way that is meaningful in the world of work. That would mean that commercially they benefit from that because they're hitting the ground running day one on their job. So that's the significance of scholarship in a world of Practitioner-Academics. And the big deal is in the and. I put it on there. The and makes all the difference. It's in the definition, right? Of scholarship, the application of the most current knowledge, and it's communicated in ways validated by peers and influence those beyond the classroom. There's ands are what make scholarship. So we must remember that. And I've popped this cartoon on here because I think it's quite important that often people all look the same. They just blur into this greyness of, there's just this load of people, and everyone says they're an expert. I'm an expert in this, now I'm an expert in that. I'd like to introduce an expert in the other. You have to know when someone's an expert or not. And that's a judgment call, but not all experts are equal. And people can present very confidently and have very little substance, or they can be dreadful presenters and have a lot of substance. They can still be experts, though. So it's a personal judgment call that we have to make our own minds up about who is and who isn't an expert. So I've made this point already. I won't labour it here, but for academics, it's likely that the outcome in scholarly terms will be around total scholarship, learning and teaching, because of the notion of bringing the workplace into the room. So we're talking about learning and teaching there. I just put Boyer's definition there because this is what we use, and it really would enhance teaching to have academic scholarship happening in our classrooms, because that's what our students want to go to the work, the ground running when they do. So hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour through academics, and an understanding of it being a really important thing, a really serious thing, grounded in research, with huge benefits once it's acknowledged, not least through the scholarly contribution it makes to the organisation in which it's happening. This happens to be the organisation I work in, Accenture School of Management. That's a picture of our building on Burrard Street. Our mission probably is similar to lots of other institutions or missions. But the tagline I'll draw your attention to is connecting people and professions. We just have that trademarked. It's becoming more and more of a significant thing in this world we all live and work in now, because it is becoming a big differentiator. And if your students are more confident they'll get a job, then you've got a much more viable business than if they're not going to be. It's a real attractor. So in our world, we employ academics. Yay, of course we do. We're proud about that. And I'd like to introduce you my colleague, Andy Bassey, who is a academic, and he's just going to walk you through his academic journey.
So this is me, and I want to share with you my story of how I got to where I am. I didn't get my doctorate until I was 56, so that was last year. So that's a long time. What was I doing prior to getting a doctorate at SFU? Well, I've had a long and rewarding career in healthcare, both in the private sector, in the public sector, in the acute care sector, in different countries. And then I've moved into adult education. It's my journey. That started out in the UK, might understand the accents, Alan and I get on well because we understand English language together. Obviously, about funny phrases in England. But I trained and worked 7 years in the National Health, nocturnal infirmary, as a lab and technologist. My specialty was hematology. Got married, moved to Canada, started to work in the acute care sector here, Vancouver General Hospital. Went into the private sector, the labs with MTS, Life Labs, as they're on strike now, but I was there 7 years. Moved up the ranks to managing the BC Cancer Agency, Department of Lab Medicine, 10 different departments. Moved somehow, I don't know how, into occupational rehab and workers' compensation board. Now working with occupational therapists and physiotherapists. Moved from there to being the administrative manager of the neonatal intensive care unit of BC Children's Hospital, working with 185 nurses, 25 neos, 24 hours a day, 7-day operation. Somehow, I became an associate dean at BCIT. How did I jump from one to another? I'll tell you in a second. From there, I started working with doctors of BC, that is now doctors of BC, but before was known as the BCMA. Worked with 5,000 family physicians. It was so good that it took me to Ontario to work with the Ontario physicians, 10,000 family physicians. What do I know about educating physicians? We're a different meal together. From there, I came back to Vancouver Coastal Health, and now they recruited me to look after the specialists, the head of all the specialities, anesthesia, orthopedics, psychiatry. I'm talking to the top doctors, trying to educate them in adult education, and then find myself at Ascend School of Management. Quite a unique journey. But as you can see, I put red dots where I think I transitioned from a healthcare course to an educator, to a academic area. So if I look at the next slide here, my education, Sally Ann said, we believe in lifelong learning. That's one of the things that I believe in. I'm sure everyone does. So in my journey, the jump from the lab to being able to look after OTs and PTs was because I got an MBA. It's a general education that had business skills, that had transferable skills. So it doesn't matter what the specialty was. I could still say, I can work with these guys because you're the expert. I don't have to be a physiotherapist. I could help the business side of it. From there, I did get my opportunity to go to BCIT. So how did I become an associate at BCIT? Well, BCIT were having problems. Most education institutions do have a problem, and they look for a solution. They say, Andy, you've got a problem. Can you help? I said, what's the problem? Well, Ministry of Education has just expanded our training program for MedLab technologists. We know you're a MedLab Connect person. We know you're a manager. We know you're connected to all the lab managers. Okay, that's a good point. We need that. So why? Because they won't talk to us. Education wants us to expand. We've expanded our program by 40 seats. But the health authorities won't take our students because they have to have practical spots, and they won't talk to us. They won't tell us why they won't take our students. So, they can help. Sure. Go in there. I have no idea what education is, but they have a problem. They see an expert come in. First thing that happens is I have an opportunity to talk to the Minister of Health at a networking event. Healthcare. Minister, I've got a problem. What's your problem, Abby? Yes, I've got 40 increase in seats in MedLab, and the health authorities won't give us any practicum spots. We can't do it. We have to be able to have practicum spots, otherwise we can't run the program. Okay, write me a paper and see what we can do. Wrote a paper along with my dean, sent it to them. Obviously, the minister never does anything. Gives it to the deputy minister, who happens to be Penny Ballum. Penny Ballum is now running PHSA, but at that time, she was at BGH where I was working. Penny calls us in, says, Andy, let's have a meeting. I'm going to get all the health authorities. And when the ministry calls you, you show up. So now all of a sudden, they're in the room. She says, you guys sort this out. Locks the door and says, you're not looking into finish it. So we start talking, and what the problem was is that education was doing what education does, and that is giving theory to students. And say, now go and work in the industry, get some practical experience. They would do a little bit, then they'd come back to the educate. But they were doing it 4 times a year. And the health authority saying, this is too much in and out, in and out. Why can't we just have them one time? Give them to the students one time. So that was one of the solutions. The other was they're graduating at wrong time. The point is practical experience, expertise, understanding, and the educator recognized the value of that. My problem was that the other faculty members, oh, you're a healthcare guy. What do you know about education? We got masters in education. You got nothing. So I'll show you guys. So that's why I did my doctorate then. And only because I wasn't being recognized for my educational value. So most people start out a career, as an individual or a professional. They learn management skills and they end up in leadership, like my journey. The skill sets that you need change over time. You start off with more technical skills. You develop your management skills, but you should always be learning personal and leadership skills. So that's where Praedemic is. They bring sort of two areas, expertise, and at the end of the day, hopefully you become a academic at the end of it.
Okay, so by way of wrapping up, and we are now running out of time, so I'm not going to dwell on what I had plans to say. This is the only slide that I will share with you for now. And this is, if you're wanting to find out more about this and be part of a Praedemic network, that's, I was going to say organised. It is organised, but it's the shape of members. So, we can all join that. I'm a part of this. I love it. It's called SPiRe, so Supporting Professionals into Higher Education Network, SPiRe, called SPiRe. And this was set up probably 4 or 5 years ago to support professionals into higher education. This was people who were coming from predominantly professions like business, like policing, like law, like healthcare. They lend themselves to practitioners coming into the world of teaching and learning because of the practical nature of all the application of knowledge in those professions. So they set up, or some academics set up SPiRe to support those people coming into institutions. The lady who set it up, I popped her name here, Claire Stocks. She used to be quite a significant person in BPP's learning and teaching team. I used to be the Dean for Learning and Teaching at BPP, and she was someone who headed up the practitioner end of what BPP was doing, which now is way advanced than when I was there. But Claire Stocks is still owning the SPiRe network. And I talked to her on the weekend. She's now moved on to Chester University. So if you can read her email address, you'll see it says Chester there. You can Google her, you can LinkedIn her. I said to her, I've got a short slot about academics. Would it be okay to mention SPiRe? And she said, oh my God, the network has gone international. We would love more Canadian academics to join us. So feel free to join SPiRe if you are that way inclined. If you haven't got her name against about it, you can contact me. If you can't remember my name and I don't have a card, or you don't know me, we've got Andy, or just Accender. We're all, one of the same there. But that would be my call to action. For anyone who's really interested, it's quite a vibrant network. They meet monthly, they have webinars. It's all from within. So it just depends what people are interested in, what they're challenged by, what they want to share. And it's quite an organised way for academics to be very practically oriented at sharing resources, linking and learning. So that is all I think I wanted to say. Let's have a moment of questions at this time. Yeah. Yeah. Key and Andy's contacts in case you want to get listen. Any questions, comments, concerns? Jokes? Anything?
I just want to separate what you can bring to
one question here and then one question. So I've, in opposite to your journey, I've been an academic all my life, and I won't tell you the number of years because then you guess my age. And I know it's a privilege in some sense, but I was talking to one earlier today, and I feel like I don't know how to go back into industry. I would like to, but it just feels so far away, and I see myself as a social scientist. As I am teaching students about diversity inclusion, and that is something that they understand and they feel that they're living it on a daily basis. So I know that my experiences are not very disconnected from human resource management, but then I also want to be more connected to the industry, and I don't know how to. Yeah. So my sense of that, and there's this massive tension between industry and academics. There always is. Academics has kind of bridged the gap from industry into academia, but going the other way is a whole nother world. You've probably got a comment on this, Mosen, but for me, it's about networking. It's about the networks you're in, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. And if you know people in the industry that you want to get in, there's quite often an in that way. I'm answering my own question now also in a way. You said you did a EdD.
Yeah.
To put that stamp on your profile that now I'm grateful. And I wish we had something for dynamics, for purely dynamics, and then they would go ahead and spend life. I'm industry ready, right? I've got a PhD, but I'm industry ready. But
it's one way street. So as academics, we accept professionals, but they don't accept us. They need work experience only. Somehow. But I understand it's a bit difficult.
And besides, I can share my perspective. I left board of org 6 years ago, but I still continue my relations with these professional organizations. There's so many professional organizations. If you're affiliated, going to the events, you're just showing up. I still exist. I'm still interested. So you don't disconnect yourself.
But the difference between you and her is you've been in that industry. She hasn't been in the industry. I mean, I have the Bible, CPHR and SHRM, but it's just... Okay, interesting. What question, Karina? You had a question, sorry. And my journey is similar to Andy's. I started bachelor, and then I worked as an architect, and then I studied the master's, and then I started teaching, and then I worked as project manager. It's the same, almost project manager, and now I'm teaching project management, so it's the same. The question is, how can you fill the gap? The research here is about this idea, but how can we fill the gap between any industry learning and education and between the industry and profession itself? Like, for example, project management, it needs a research or like a thesis. How can we fill the gap between studying project management and working as a manager? It's completely different. And then again, for architecture, how can we fill the gap as studying architecture and working as an architect? It's completely different. It's not completely different, but it's not the same. It's not the same. So this each industry needs a research or maybe a thesis, like a PhD thesis, to fill the gap, in my opinion. It's a big
What I hear you saying is, how do you bridge those two things? What a Praedemic can do is bring real-world experience to the classroom. So when you're teaching a class and you have got project management or you got another activity, I can bring real-life examples that I've dealt with in the industry to the classroom. In the textbook, you might have one case study. If you've been working it, you can say, that's what the theory tells you. Let me tell you what it's really like to work environment. When HR says you need to know about conflict management, they're going to give you a simple thing. This is a more real-life example. So you make it alive for the students. So from the academic experience, that's what you can bring to the classroom.
Yes.
And then from an academic side, you might be an academic. If you network with these practitioner groups or associations and you hear what their challenges are, you can say, look, I can help you with that. I know how to do the research. Maybe what you need is me to help you write a paper or something. So look for those abilities to shorten the gaps, to show them what value you bring to the table. What is the value you bring as an academic? What is the value you bring as an architect to the organization?
Sorry, Karima, we'd run out of time.
It's okay. Andy just added what I was about to say.
Oh, sorry.
My time is 2 a.m. This thing now sticking around.